What would the impact be if the UK voted to leave the EU? I speak to the Chief Executive of the official Out campaign, Vote Leave, Matthew Elliott. Matthew, what are your predictions for the Leave campaign?
Well, we've now got about 50 days to go between now and the June 23rd referendum on the EU in Britain. And I think Leave's in a very good position to be able to win this thing. We're now at basically level pegging in the polls, but a lot of momentum is with us. We just recently had President Obama in the UK trying to urge people to stay in the EU. The government did some quite big heavy-hitting reports saying that Britain should stay in. It sent leaflets to every household in the country saying we should stay in. It's done all of their big guns, but the polls are still moving our way. So I think momentum's with Leave. I'm quite confident on June 23rd we'll win. Why do you think everything's moving in your direction? I think the country's concluded that basically the Prime Minister wasn't able to get the reform he talked about. He said that he was going to change the EU. He said he was going to bring powers back to the UK, make the national parliament supreme again, make sure the EU is reformed, complete the single market. He had a whole list of things he was going to do. He didn't actually do any of them with his renegotiation. So I think a lot of people now feel, well, the EU didn't reform, we didn't get any change, so therefore we should go. Tell us about the voting patterns. The voting patterns are quite interesting. I mean, generally speaking, the older you are, the more likely you are to be for a Leave vote. The wealthier you are, the more likely you are to be for a Remain vote, perhaps because you travel more and what have you. So there are some quite significant demographic trends. Roughly speaking, though, across the country, apart from London, which is quite pro-European, quite Remain, the rest of the country is much more Eurosceptic, with the exception of Scotland being slightly more pro-European. But what I predict is that if we have a Leave vote on June 23rd, the whole country will vote in the same way. It won't be one of these situations where Scotland votes differently and London votes differently, the rest of the country makes a Leave vote. We'll vote uniformly. Why do you think so many people outside of London and outside of Scotland are Eurosceptic? I think that it's people's experience of the world. If you look at the impact of the EU on people's lives, if you're richer, wealthiher, you tend to like to be able to travel more easily, and you've got more experience of European cultures and what have you, and you have the concerns that people outside London have. If you're outside of London, you often tend to be slightly less well paid. You've had the competition for jobs from migrants from the European Union. You've seen the pressure that e-migration has put on local public services, be it NHS waiting lists or class sizes. So in some ways you've borne the brunt of Britain being in the European Union without having some of the benefits. I think that's the key reason why there's a difference. So talk us through the process that will take place with the referendum and what happens after the referendum. Well, if there's a Remain vote in the referendum, of course, nothing changes. If there's a Leave vote in the referendum, also nothing changes overnight. It's not like anything will change the next day. Is it not very likely that the markets will react very badly against the UK in that case? I'm not sure how the markets will react. I think there's sometimes an assumption they'll react badly, but actually I think what some of the markets will think will be, well, actually it's the end to the uncertainty. Britain's had this issue with its membership of the European Union. Finally it's been put to a vote in the UK. Finally the British people have made up their minds. Now, of course, we have resolution. We know the process going forward. There'll be more negotiations about British exit. There'll be an Article 50 process, and it could all be quite smooth. So I actually think markets will think, well, actually, we've got a decision. Now we can put it behind us. I think we saw a taste of that earlier in the year when the Leave campaign took off a little bit. There was actually a strong dip in the pound. What's from stopping us seeing that again, should the referendum go your way? Well, I think when Boris Johnson came out and the PM came back with his deal, there was a slight dip in the pound, but a fortnight later it was back to the levels it was before. And I think more importantly, we should look at foreign direct investment. And if you look at that, it's been continuing as it was. People still see the UK as being a great place to do business, a place they want to put their money, a place where they want to set up new factories and employ more people. So in the economic terms, the whole referendum and the so-called threat of Brexit hasn't had an adverse effect on investment.
But isn't the investment in the UK conditional on it being part of the EU?
I don't think so, because investors can actually see the opinion polls. They will know that there's a fairly good chance that Britain could vote to leave the EU. Were they to be concerned by this uncertainty, we would have seen a huge drop in investment as investors basically wait to see the referendum result. In fact, it's continued to build as people continue to see the UK as being a good place to do business in Europe. So actually, I think investors have been put off.
Do you think the UK has the potential to be an independent state within Europe like Switzerland?
I think Britain would actually get an even better deal than Switzerland has, in the sense that Britain is the second largest economy in Europe. We're the biggest export destination for other EU member states. We're currently in the European Union, so we're not negotiating a new deal to join the EU or to be associated with the EU. We're currently part of it and negotiating a friendly separation. So I think we'd actually get a very good deal with full free trade access to the EU, and actually things will be much more on a level playing field. But actually what the Eurozone needs is further centralisation to make the Euro work, and what Britain wants is a trading relationship, and a relationship based on being friendly neighbours rather than being unhappy housemates.
If the referendum goes your way at the end of June, how long will it be until the UK is officially removed from the EU? Ballpark figure.
Ballpark figure, 2 years. The whole Article 50 process in the treaties about a country leaving the EU says up to 2 years, and I'm confident the deal could be done in that time.
Okay, with no complications?
All negotiations have complications in there, but I think rationally, for both sides, for both the UK and the rest of the EU, they both benefit from having free trade between the countries. They both benefit from basically the UK having strong bilateral agreements when it comes to looking after the environment, when it comes to issues like extradition and what have you. So it's mutually beneficial for this to happen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for watching. I'm Christopher Hemmons. With me today was Matthew Elliott, the Chief Executive of the Vote Leave campaign for the EU referendum in the UK. Thank you again, and visit our website, Dukascopy.tv, for more exclusive content.